Critical reflection question number one. How does your product use or challenge conventions? And how does it represent social groups or issues? Well, to start off, my media product is an AS opening sequence falling under the genre of psychological thrillers, especially those that represent niche psychological disorders like insomnia and sleep paralysis. In particular, my movie revolves around schizophrenia, a condition where people hear voices and hallucinate due to environmental and genetic factors. I wanted to include realistic aspects of the condition in my movie, which is why I put in a lot of effort into my topic research using symptoms such as withdrawing from friends and family and feeling irritable and depressed. However, some things such as the way she hears voices and sees figures have been dramatized to keep the viewers engaged and to deliver a clearer picture of the condition to those who are less aware of it. For my movie, I chose the protagonist to be female. This is because the protagonist starts experiencing symptoms of schizophrenia after her lover passes away, and because women are seen as emotionally weaker and more vulnerable than men, their mental state is more likely to be affected when someone they love deeply passes away. This idea of casting a woman as my protagonist follows the traditional media conventions of gender. Apart from just this, I followed other traditional conventions of media through various camera shots. A part of my research for this project was research on the camera work used in psychological thrillers, and I tried to integrate this research into my project by various means, such as the close up in the very first scene, where Sarah's dull and expressionless face can be seen as she zones out, unaware and unaffected by whatever is going on around her. Apart from that, I've used extreme close ups as well. We can see that before the flashback sequence, Sarah is seen as a mess. However, she isn't crying. She's leaning against the cupboard as she starts reminiscing the past. After the flashback sequence has ended, there is a extreme close-up on Sarah's eyes where tears trickle down her face. This shot displays the raw emotions being experienced by Sarah and shows the impact of the flashback sequence on her, emphasizing the grief that she's experiencing and how her lover passing has affected her. The use of point of view shots has been implemented in different scenes for different purposes. The POV shot of Sarah walking down the staircase creates a sense of tension and anxiety as the lighting during that scene is also low key and she seems to be alone in an eerie environment. However, the second time that I've used a point of view shot was during the time where Sarah's mother barges into the room. You can clearly see the panic through the movement of the camera. It creates a sense of chaos, and I believe it helps convey emotions that I wanted to display quite effectively. POV shots put the audience in the characters' perspectives, creating a sense of immersion and tension, which is why I decided to use them. My usage of these shots also depict how POV shots can be used to convey different emotions. During my research, I found that many directors use Dutch angles as the tilted frames convey disorientation and unease, which is why I used the tilted camera angle during the kitchen scene, where Sarah turns around to the voice of Sean. I also came to find out through my research that mirrors and reflections can create a sense of unease and tension, as characters may see themselves or others in unexpected ways, creating a sense of disorientation or confusion, which is why I have used many mirrors and reflections throughout the duration of my film, especially during the last scene where Sarah spots her lover in the reflection of the mirror. However, when she turns around, he is nowhere to be seen. I have also implemented the use of low angle shots during my film, where Sarah's mother barges into her room, the camera points down towards Sarah, and then the next shot points up towards her mother. The use of these angles convey how Sarah is the more weaker individual in this scene. The use of short reverse shot and over the shoulder shots can also be seen in this sequence as it shows the mother talking to her daughter and Sarah's raw expressions in return to what her mother was saying. The use of traditional media conventions is also integrated through sound, as I've used unsettling vocal processing, mainly whispers, quite a few times throughout my movie, by which Sarah starts hearing Sean's voice at first. By using whispers in my sequence, I've created an eerie sense of unease and tension in the viewer's mind. Another traditional media convention commonly used in psychological thrillers are montage sequences, which is why I decided to place a flashback sequence in my film. These sequences usually convey the state of a character's mind or to suggest a passage of time, and in the case of my movie, it was definitely the second one. Many aspects of my movie were heavily influenced by the director I took inspiration from, Lee Chung-hyun, a South Korean film director and screenwriter. He's known for his thought-provoking content that delves into social commentary by critiquing Korean society politics and morality. A way in which I integrated this part into my film was by criticizing South Asian culture through the depiction of the way Sarah's mother acts towards her after she has a breakdown, which I will be explaining as we move along. Furthermore, his psychological thrillers are known for introducing complex characters and plot twists, often exploring human psychology. A way in which I took influence from this is by quite literally portraying the protagonist in my film as a schizophrenic person to bring light to mental illnesses that aren't talked about enough within our society. Some recurring motifs in his films that depict his directing style are family dynamics, examining the complexities of family relationships and their impact, as well as trauma and healing, portraying characters' struggles with emotional scars and loneliness and isolation, highlighting the consequences of social disconnections. All of this is what influenced my movie to include the many elements that it does, such as Sarah's relationship with her mother, her disconnecting from reality as she loses herself, and spirals after a traumatic event in her life, and how these events have affected her mental state and well being overall. As for the mise en scene, some stylistic features used by Lee are vibrant color palettes using bold and saturated colors to evoke emotion. This, in particular, is one thing that I kept constant throughout my film, as I wanted my film to have the same feeling and evoke the same expressions as one experiences while watching any of his films. I used bold, saturated colors with warm and olive tones throughout. Aside from the flashback sequence, I used cool tones and somewhat dull and pastel colors during that part of my film to set it apart from the rest of my media product. Lee also uses unconventional narrative structures, non-linear storytelling, which is something I tried integrating into my sequence as to keep the audience on edge and unaware of what is to happen next. Another element from his film that I tried including in mine was handheld cinematography, as it helps create intimacy, unease, and tension. Two movies in particular of his that I really took inspiration from was The Call 2020 and Ballerina. During my institution research, the studio I chose to conduct my research on was A24, since what inspires me about them the most is that they managed to produce Oscar winning films with a limited budget and resources. While editing my flashback sequence, I used Adobe Premiere Pro, which is also the editing software used by A24. I used the Luma key and added the Gaussian blur onto the clip to create a dreamy effect, which is something that I borrowed from the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, produced by A24 Films LLC. From the very first clip of my movie, we can see how the social groups represented is Muslims, how during the morning scene the women have their heads covered, and how majority of them are dressed in dull colors such as black and or white to represent grief. A way in which I represented social groups was how mental health isn't really taken into account a lot by the brown community. Being a part of this community, it's like I've experienced it firsthand. People are really quick to call a person crazy, but they don't really try to ever debunk what drove a person to that point. They expect the crazy person to just get over it over time. They believe that time will heal, and they don't really take it seriously to the point where they feel the need to consult with a doctor or seek professional medical help. In the scene where Sarah's mother barges into the room, she almost yells at her as if she's getting mad at her, asking her to get a hold of herself and implying that she needs to get over it, in a tone which implies that she's almost frustrated with her daughter. What could have been done here instead was maybe if it wasn't so stereotypically ingrained into our system, the mother should have gone up to her child and she should have consoled her. She should have told her that it's going to be okay or advised Sarah about how it's high time that they seek professional medical help. Because, as previously seen in the sequence, Sarah has been experiencing these symptoms for a while now. However, she didn't do that. Instead, she chose to yell at her and sort of let her frustration out on the already depressed child that has lost her loved one and was in a state of despair. Now, where this could be reinforcing harmful stereotypes, but as somebody who's lived in a brown community their whole life, I feel like it is a very realistic depiction of how this community views mental health and how non seriously they take it. How they just expect a person to get over whatever they're going through after a week or so, because that's just what's sort of been ingrained into us. And I feel like sometimes people, especially within the brown community, feel as though the person who's going through something major is overreacting or that they're dragging it out too much, that they quote unquote need to fix themselves. But they never really think that it's serious enough to actually go to a doctor and seek medical help. They think that the person should just get over it themselves, which is something that has been hinted in my opening sequence. The social groups represented are very obviously brown people, South Asians, South Asian culture, and the issues highlighted are mental health issues and how they aren't taken into account as seriously as physical injuries and how neglected that part of health is within this community.